Hello and welcome to Homegrown Florida. I'm Katrina, and today we're going to be talking all about the 5 mistakes you should avoid in your garden. And the reason why I know of these 5 mistakes is because I have made them all. And I'm here today to help you avoid those mistakes so that you're not spending a bunch of time, money, and frustration. I've been gardening here in Central Florida, 9A, for about 5 years. And I have to say that the first 2 years of gardening here in Florida were extremely frustrating. I made absolutely every single mistake that you could make in the garden, and I'm sure I'm not done yet. Those first 2 years were very difficult, and I even considered quitting. But there was something very appealing to me about being able to grow my own food. The first reason was because of how much it helped my mental and physical health by working in the garden. The other reason was I just really liked the idea of being able to grow my own organic food that was healthy for my family and was a less cost for me. So I was determined. I understand many of you are probably frustrated as well with gardening in general, but I'm hoping that these 5 mistakes that you can avoid will help you navigate some of those pitfalls that I had to deal with, and so that you have a much better experience in your vegetable garden. I encourage you not to give up, especially if you've had a difficult gardening season, because the next gardening season is right around the corner and you have the opportunity to correct all of those mistakes that you made before. So let's get into it. Make sure to hit that subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. When I started gardening about 5 years ago, I was actually at our old house. Our old house is just maybe, 30 miles south of where we are today. And the biggest mistake I made was I didn't look at my garden location to figure out where the sun was throughout the day. And so at my old house, I looked at my yard and I said, oh, that's a great spot. It's out of the way. The dogs won't get to it. I'm going to put my garden there. I didn't pay attention to where the sun was at various parts of the day, or even where it was during summer versus winter. So what did I end up with? I ended up with a very large square bed that got sun about 10 hours a day, which for Florida, that is about 4 hours too many. So I ended up having to do a lot of things with shade cloth and with planting trees and bushes kind of around the garden so that way they would grow and help provide shade. It was kind of a bit of a nightmare. So when I first got here, I put all my potted plants against this fence right here that you see behind me. And what I found out was that this gets sun until about noon. And then at noon, it is completely shaded for the rest of the day. So really not enough sun for the plants. But this side, where you can start to see some of my fruit trees or fruit bushes, really, it gets sun starting at 12 all the way till 6 or 7. And so that was a great place to put the 6 or 7 hour bushes that I have, like my blackberries and my blueberries. So I started moving the pots around the yard to see where the plants were going to do their best. I also took pictures of my yard at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m., and 6 p.m. So really think of it like every 2 to 4 hours, go outside and take pictures of your yard to see where the sun is hitting the ground or the grass. Look where your shadows are occurring, like from a fence, from a shed, or from the trees above, from the house itself, and you'll see how many hours of sun. Now, obviously, a lot of us know that morning sun is the best sun because it's less intense. So I was looking for a place where I was going to get 6 hours of sunlight, but it was going to be morning sun. So that ended up being the east side of my property. Another thing I did was I made sure to keep my plants in pots until a full growing season had occurred. So I moved in summer, and I didn't plant any of my raised beds until winter, because I wanted to make sure that the sun in the summer, where it is in the sky, wasn't going to impact where my plants would be placed for the winter. Where I'm located and where I ended up putting my plants on that east side of my house, actually the winter sun is quite different than the summer sun. The winter sun actually has more shade because there's a line of trees on the south side of my property. So knowing the difference between your summer sun and your winter sun and the shade that it provides is really going to help you long term when you're going to be placing things like raised beds that you don't intend to move for a long period of time. Now, the benefit with using containers or pots was that you can move them to whatever spot of the garden you want, whether it's season by season or throughout the day. So the next big mistake I made was around the soil that I used. Soil is often one of those things that we overlook. And to me, starting out as a new gardener, it was such an abstract theory, really. Like, it's soil, it's dirt, what's the big deal? But the soil contains nutrients that the plant uses to grow and to produce fruit. And as you keep growing in the same spot or using the same soil, you're depleting it of its nutrients. So you have to add nutrients back. And I just couldn't bring myself to be constantly adding more and more, nutrients that I was buying online. It just didn't seem very efficient to me. So what I was trying to do was figure out ways that I could use what I already have around my home to add those nutrients back. So things like composting. I also have where I compost in place, using grass clippings, leaf litter. I bury some of my vegetable scraps. There's other ways like mulching with organic materials, cover crops, trenching and burying the plant waste from those particular cover crops. Lots of ways to add organic material back to your garden without having to go and buy a bunch of amendments. Although amendments are great, I am definitely a firm believer of amendments. I love worm castings, things like that. But if you put all the natural ingredients that you have around your house that are usually thrown away into your garden, you're going to get at least half the battle done around your soil health. Another big mistake I made was not mulching. I don't know what was my problem when I was first starting out, but for me, I just thought mulch was unnecessary, an extra step, and I didn't think it looked pretty in my garden. It made it look kind of disorganized and like a bunch of litter in my garden. Don't know why that was important to me, but it was. Anyway, so the mulch that you put down in your garden has a ton of benefits, especially here in Florida where we're dealing with some serious heat. Mulch is beneficial for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest one here in Florida is to keep your plants cool. Because the summer heat is so intense here, the soil gets super hot, the plants stress under that condition, and then they start to die off. Another issue with not mulching, especially where it's very hot, is the water evaporates out of the soil quicker. So if you have a mulch down, the water will be retained. And then for those folks up north where you experience a lot more colder temperatures, especially in the evening, mulch can help keep your plants warmer during the colder season. So mulch acts as like an insulator for that temperature differences that the plants are not used to, and as well as keeping the moisture in the ground. Now, if you add an organic mulch like glass clipping and leaf litter, then you're further enhancing the benefits of mulch by feeding organic material to your soil. So really, there is absolutely no drawbacks of mulching. I encourage it if you're using containers, if you're using raised beds, if you're using in-ground. It doesn't matter. Mulch, mulch, mulch. Another one of my big mistakes when I first started out gardening was not growing at the right time. Believe it or not, I thought, I wanted to grow broccoli. And so I went and I got me a little broccoli transplant and I put it in the ground around July. And I couldn't understand why the plant was so stressed out and never produced for me. Well, now I know. You don't grow broccoli in the summer, especially not here in Florida. Now, I do a lot of experimenting, so I have done some experimenting with some tropical varieties of broccoli in the summer, but the majority of my broccoli harvest and crop is done during our cooler months from fall all the way to late winter. Now, that's here in Florida. Each location here in the United States has a different date of when you should start your vegetables. Now, a lot of people go to like the Farmer's Almanac and gets their last expected frost date or their first expected frost date to figure out that that's their growing season. And so that's the earliest they can start their seeds, or they have to count down from their last frost date to figure out how long they can go into the season growing things. Here in Florida, it's a tiny bit different. We actually don't typically grow a lot during the summer. Our biggest growing season starts in fall and runs all the way to late spring. Now, obviously, I grow a lot of things during the summer, but it's not your typical things that you would see at like a grocery store. So our grocery store traditional vegetables are typically grown in fall. And I'm really excited because we are literally, 2 weeks away from starting some of our warmer season crops here in Central Florida next month. And then in September, we're going to be starting our cool season crops. So things like broccoli. So I'm super excited that this time of year is happening because we're going to be doing a lot of really exciting things. We're going to be beefing up all of the vegetables that love to grow during the Florida winter. So keep in mind that you need to grow certain plants at certain times. And I have a chart that I'm going to share with you that basically shows some high level what you should be growing in fall and the timelines from when to plant, transplant, and harvest. Another mistake I made was focusing on the varieties that were traditional. So when you are going to plant a seed or get a transplant, varieties are extremely important based on your area. There are certain varieties that do better in certain areas. So here in Florida, for example, you can grow asparagus, but it's going to be extremely difficult. Obviously, it takes 2 to 3 years because it's a perennial. That's anywhere in the country, really. But it'll be 2 to 3 years before you realize that you're getting mediocre results or you're getting very spindly, thin asparagus. Now, I know some people in Florida have been able to do it. I have not been successful. It is something that I'm going to try again. But, I've really tried to change my mindset into thinking, instead of focusing on the things that I can't do, let me focus on the things that I can. So if I can't grow asparagus, what can I grow? Something that grows incredibly well here in Florida that is kind of a similar substitute are our long beans, or asparagus beans, or yard long beans, or what they're called. And you can grow them from late spring all the way to mid-fall. So in our summer season, which is awesome because that is yet another way for us to extend our growing season. They tend to be nitrogen fixing plants, so lots of benefits from growing them. They don't taste exactly like asparagus, but I gotta tell you, I have found that I absolutely love different varieties of long beans, and I grow them a lot in my garden during the summer. Another example is cranberries. We cannot grow cranberries here in Florida. I don't even know very many people who've tried, but what we can grow is something called roselle. Roselle is a tropical plant, once again, grows during the summer, and it actually is harvestable around early fall. So you're gonna have these roselle flower calyxes to harvest in time for Thanksgiving. It is a wonderful cranberry substitute. In fact, it is actually my favorite over actual cranberries now. So you would be surprised by trying different varieties and maybe things that are not so common in the greater United States, but is very common in your area, that you might find a lot of vegetables that you really like. Now, I always only grow 1 to 2 plants of anything new, just to see if, number one, we're going to eat it, two, how easy or difficult it is to grow. And traditionally, anything that grows in your area, is known to grow in your area, or native to your area, is always going to be easier to grow. And then also its yield and spacing and things like that. Just to get to know the plant is why I do an experiment of 1 to 2 plants. If you're not in Florida, I strongly encourage you to look up websites, Facebook groups, Instagram groups, YouTubers, whoever in your area that grows a lot of natives for your particular location, because they're going to key you in on some of the interesting varieties that might be available or better suited for your environment. What are some of the mistakes that you've made in your garden since starting? How did you correct them? Head down to the comment section. I would love to hear what you have learned throughout your gardening experience. And if you want to know more about soil health that I mentioned on our number 2 mistake that we made, I will post a link that has a video to my big garden secret, which is all about soil health and composting in place and cover crops. Take a look at that. It really breaks down how to replenish the nutrients in your soil easy and inexpensively.